Finland lies next to her enemy. So there's no way she can go to sleep while every other person is asleep. She had to stay awake for herself, for her people. Hello, welcome back again. If you're new here, I'm Lauren and it's my pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, share, and subscribe for more so you don't miss out whenever I upload my new videos. Alright, today we're gonna check out another video from Finland, and this one is about the military capacity of Europe. And Finland being the most country that is actually ready for war and is most capable military. We all know it's no news that Finland is, apart from Ukraine, has what it takes that is more than ready for war. They have what it takes to go to war and they are more than ready for it. So how it has become Europe's most capable military.
If you listen to basically
states,
any European head of state or head of military in the past 2 years talking about defense and security, the tone tends to be, well, slightly alarmed. From the Swedish defense chiefs saying that the country needs to prepare for war, to the British Minister of Defense saying that Europe is in a pre-war era, to the
Okay, Europe is in a pre-war era, and then Finland, on the other hand, is so prepared, and then Europe has to prepare. So how could it be that Finland is so prepared and Europe just has to, awaken from her slumber, and get ready for this. One great thing I love about Finnish people is the fact that they are so defensive. They are so defensive, and the fact that they have had all these things put in place decades from now, and
former chief of Poland's National Security Bureau, saying that NATO has just 3 years to prepare for war with Russia. And that's just few examples. But there is one country that seems to be a lot more relaxed and whose leadership is reassuring rather than anxious when talking about this topic, even though it shares a border with Russia, and even though it has personal experiences with Russian aggression in the 20th century, Finland. Why? Well, because Finland has the most capable and combat-ready military on the continent, excluding Ukraine, which is obviously in a different situation. And unlike almost any European country, Finland is truly ready for war. Today, we often talk about how Europe needs to step up its game to deter Russia, but Finland has already been doing that for decades. And if Europe is looking for inspiration, it doesn't really have to look anywhere else. So why are Finns so confident? How does a country of just 5.5 million people have such a strong military? And why should Europe follow its example? To find out, I spoke with an expert on Finnish defense policy and military, Mina Alander.
Chances would be that if Russia tried some kind of like a limited operation in northern Finland, first of all, there's this joke about like the snow that starts speaking Finnish when you get within range.
So let's take a look. Now, the first part of a preparedness for war are the numbers. Whether you have the mass of people, the capacity to train them, and the equipment that they can use. After all, one of the advantages that Russia has always had is the ability to just throw bodies at their opponents. And without the ability to field a significant force, any fight would be very short-lived. And despite having a small population, in this regard Finland really delivers. Although it only has a small force of 24,000 professional full-time soldiers, in case of war it can quickly mobilize to a wartime strength of 280,000 soldiers. by calling up reservists who know exactly what position in which unit they would go to, and train for that on a regular basis. That means that within just a few weeks, Finland can call up to arms roughly 5% of its population, which is a number comparable to Israel. But on top of that, it also has a pool of almost 900,000 reservists, men and women who have received military training and can be called up to replace losses in case of war. And although that would probably be difficult for the economy, Finland is, at least in theory, prepared to call up roughly 20% of its population, which is already trained and ready to fight in case it really needed to. And just to put this into perspective, if the UK, which is roughly 12 times larger population than Finland, would adopt the same model, it should be ready to mobilize 3 million soldiers, with another 10 million in reserves to draw from. And if we apply the same ratio to the US, the United States would have 16 million soldiers in wartime strength and 55 million in reserves. Now these sound like absurd numbers because neither of the two countries would likely ever be able to train or equip nearly as many people. But in case of Finland, these numbers are real, and they are not just on paper. There are real people with training under their belt and equipment waiting for them in storage in time of need.
So this is sort of the big difference, like kind of the point of departure is a very different one. Many other European countries now have to turn the ship around like 180 degrees because they went all in on this expeditionary force model, focus on crisis management and so on, where you have like a small mobile force, and almost nobody kept up this Finnish style, old school, large reserve.
And it's not just the people. Finland has been one of the major supporters of Ukraine, supplying military equipment for the entire duration of the war. And the reason it's been able to do that is because it has everything that other European nations don't have, including many things that prior to the war in Ukraine have been considered outdated and unnecessary. Finland has, for example, something like 600 tanks, probably the strongest artillery force in Europe, and massive stocks of ammunition, so that it can actually keep fighting longer than a week. According to the Finnish top general, on a per capita basis, Finland has the most firepower in Europe, and it has the kind of equipment that is needed to fight exactly the kind of war that we see in Ukraine. Grinding, attritional war with high losses and high rate of consumption of material and ammunition. But why and how has Finland been able to amass such a considerable military, especially when compared to the rest of Europe, including other, even wealthier Nordic countries like Sweden or Norway?
One great thing that, you got to consider in terms of wondering why Finland has to be so defensive, has to be so prepared for war, has to be, put all of these amenities in place, all this equipment in place. Well, if you were, let's break it down to a local man's understanding. If you were sleeping in a house where you know that you have an enemy in with you, would you sleep with your eyes closed? Or would you even not sleep at all? So I guess that's the situation Finland has found herself in. So why would Finland not be more than ready, like more than prepared, more capable than any other European country when she shares the closest border to her enemy? Definitely she has to be more than prepared.
The Finnish defense forces
have
probably never been as well equipped as they are now. This is a result of very long-term foresight, analysis-based procurement decisions over the past 20-30 years.
Just a quick break here. In the coming months, I will be starting a newsletter focused on what you need to know and what you might have missed in geopolitics. It's completely free and you can already sign up for it, and it would be quite helpful if you do that. You can find the link for the sign up in the description below. And now, back to the conversation. During the Cold War, Finland's preparedness didn't really stand out the way it does today, as everyone was forced to take defense seriously back then. For context, the West German military was twice as large as the German military today, with a wartime strength of over 1 million people. But while in the 1990s, Europe started enjoying the peace dividend and all the countries were cutting down their budgets, for Finland, the Russian threat never really went anywhere, and the Cold War had never really ended. And so, while European militaries were getting rid of warehouses full of heavy equipment that they didn't need anymore, Finland, which never cut down its military budget the way others did, went on a shopping spree, and it started buying up this leftover equipment with huge discounts. The other part of that is that although during the Cold War almost every European nation had conscription, meaning that a significant portion of their population had military training and could be called up as reservists, in the 1990s most of Europe got rid of it. But Finland never did. It still trains about 30,000 people for 6 to 12 months, meaning that its pool of trained reservists keeps getting full and refreshed. That is why Finland has been able to get stronger while everyone else's militaries became almost dysfunctional, or turned into small expeditionary forces focused on overseas.
Yeah, if I were in Finland shoes, I would definitely continue with my training and even boost my capability to the highest level possible, really, because staying close to a country like that, knowing that you could be attacked any moment, anytime, any hour,
Counterinsurgency missions. And why have they been able to do that without breaking the bank? Because while you might expect that with a military of this size and capability, Finland had to invest a lot, that's not really the case. Since 1990, Finland usually spent less than 2% of GDP, which is pretty low. But the country was and is exceptionally smart about its military spending, because its model is actually pretty cheap. With conscription, you don't need that many professional soldiers whose salaries you have to pay every month, but you have a trained force if you need them. And because Finland bought older but still good equipment with a huge discount, it has now enough stuff to equip everyone.
That's the beauty of the conscription service. One very important reason why Finland still has it is that it's the cheapest way to ensure sufficient national defense capability for such a large territory, but with a small population. Like Finland could never ever keep up such numbers of a professional force because it would be insanely expensive. Plus all the retirement payments and whatnot you have to pay then and so on. This 2% question is a really interesting one from Finland's perspective because Finland has been in the situation that it has wanted to keep up a sufficient level of national defense capability while at the same time minimizing costs. Because Finland has been under the same budget pressures as everybody else, especially since the Euro crisis and the global financial crisis and so on.
Finland's model is actually basically the opposite than that of another European military heavyweight, Poland, which aims to build the largest ground forces in Europe, because Poland is mostly building its military as a professional force, and it actually doesn't have a conscription, which, however, is a much more expensive option. But while numbers on paper are important, it's not the only thing that matters. As Afghanistan has shown, you can have a military that looks good on paper, but that will fall apart as soon as an enemy appears. And as Ukraine has shown, the willingness of a population to fight is one of the key factors which might decide whether wars are won or lost. And here Finland leads Europe once again, because consistently polls show that Finns are willing and ready to defend and fight for their country, more than any other nation on the continent, with 83% of people in Finland saying that they would be ready to defend their country in case of war, compared with, for example, just 33% in case of the UK. And that's not a coincidence either, because the second key part of the Finnish strategy, apart from having a strong military, is something called a total defense.
So underneath it is this whole of society approach. That means that there's extensive civilian defense structures, starting from physical things like bomb shelters and placements for explosives in bridges, these still exist everywhere in Finland, and other measures sort of like that bring together all aspects of the society and societal life, like business, media, government, administration, critical infrastructure providers, and all kinds of things that are needed to keep the society up and running. They come regularly together and exercise different like worst case scenarios to make sure that everybody knows like how to work together to keep Finland up and running. And when we see like how Russia tends to attack civilian targets, for example, in Ukraine, you kind of understand why there are these kind of extensive structures in place in Finland, that this has been thought through, like how to protect civilian parts of the society.
But would Europe be able to follow the Finnish model? And should it do that?
Even if you don't like reintroduce conscription, which I don't think is necessary everywhere, and it's maybe not the best idea either everywhere. Like in Finland, it's really connected to the high willingness to defend the country, and if that's not given, it will be very hard to like introduce something like this. I would say that this societal resilience is the part that is applicable everywhere. I think in many European countries, because of the discontinuation of the conscription and because of the professionalization of the armed forces, there has been a certain like disconnect between like national defense and the society, and that these like topics don't meet sort of, or that the society doesn't really think about it. It feels like something sort of distant and so on. But I think that this overall resilience thinking, that you improve governmental cooperation across different ministries and levels of administration to take this more holistic view of potential threats, because that's precisely the case right now. We hear all these reports about Russia planning sabotage attacks and so on. So these are very like complex matters. Like it's not so straightforward that now we have peace and then we have war and there's some kind of clear-cut sort of moment in between. I think that's at least definitely something that could be exported.
Alright guys, that was quite another one. It was really educating, and I kind of love the practical explanations they gave about Finland being the most capable country in Europe. Alright, that was great, because one notable fact that has kept Finland up and doing and where they are today is the fact that they never gave up. Resilience, that spirit of resilience, is what has kept them up to this day and what has made them who they are today. So if definitely Europe wants to, look around, they don't have to look any further. Finland is the perfect place for them to search and, definitely fasten their seatbelt. And one other thing that in their quest they should always be able to recognizes the fact that Finland lies next to her enemy. So there's no way she can go to sleep while every other person is asleep. She had to stay awake for herself, for her people, and for her safety. Thank you for watching. Don't hesitate to give this video a thumbs up, share, and do subscribe for more. I'll see you again in the next one. I'll be your girl.